This list will go over cards which are currently unrestricted in any way on the TCG ban list, but have effects which are either one support card away from being broken, repeatedly used with other combos that get banned, or are currently broken on their own and no one would be surprised to see them restricted in the near future. At number 10, we have Lyra Liske Independent Nightingale. This card has the effect to gain 500 attack times its level. Once per turn, you can inflict damage to your opponent equal to this card's level times 500, and it's unaffected by other card effects. Now, seeing as this is a fusion monster that's level 1, these effects aren't really that big of a deal. It has another effect where you can increase the level of the card by the amount of Exceeds materials on the Exceeds monsters used to fusion summon it. And the card Lyra Liske Assembled Nightingale is a card played in decks which easily get it to 5 materials. So if used for a fusion summon while it has 5 materials, assuming its other fusion monster wasn't Exceeds monsters as well, this card would gain 5 levels, so 2500 attack, making it a 4000 attack beat stick that could inflict 3000 points of effect damage every turn that was also unaffected by other card effects. So basically, an Ultimate Falcon on steroids. However, this is balanced by the fact that bringing it out in this way requires a ton of resources, and would basically empty out your hand and field if you did bring it out in this way, kind of rewarding you with a strong boss monster for all the effort put into it. Now, here's what's broken about this, and why 2 other cards are on the ban list because of this card. If this card is simply sent to the graveyard with cards like Instant Fusion or Extra Foolish Burial, and then you simply copy the effect in the graveyard with another card, like with Starving Venom, Neptune, or Phantom of Chaos, you could get its wonderful effects without having to go through the whole complicated summoning requirements. So with a card like the Tyrant Neptune, who is level 10 and can copy the effects of the monster in the graveyard permanently, with the Independent Nightingale in the graveyard, the Tyrant Neptune becomes a 5000 attack beat stick that's unaffected by card effects and can inflict 5,000 points of effect damage every turn. That's like a custom card level of brokenness, and that's why they banned the Tyrant Neptune, because of Assembled Nightingale. Same with Supreme King Dragon Starving Venom. This is a level 8 monster that's easy to bring out, so bringing out 2 of them meant being able to inflict 4,000 points of damage each, resulting in a first turn kill for 8,000 points of damage total. Now, cards which copy effects in the graveyard are inherently pretty strong, and it wasn't just Nightingale's fault that they got banned, since another card like Nightingale could just be released in the future that they could also abuse. But Nightingale is the card now that has an effect so broken that it's putting graveyard copy effects on the ban list, so it might just be a matter of time before Nightingale herself makes it to the ban list. Number 9, Chain Material. This card has the effect where, for the rest of the turn after you use this card, if you are to perform a fusion summon, you can use monsters from your field, hand, deck, or graveyard. But it has the side effects where those fusion monsters can't attack this turn, and they are destroyed during the end of the turn. So this card, if combined with a card like Fusion Gate, you can theoretically perform a near infinite amount of fusion summons that turn, assuming you have a way to recycle them and enough link pointers on the field. And there are already cards that can abuse this kind of effect, like Blaze Phoenix, the Burning Bombardment Bird, or Gustav Max. Blaze Phoenix can also be abused without Chain Material, so I was thinking of using either Blaze Phoenix or Chain Material at this spot on the list, but I decided to go Chain Material because its effect in theory is kind of crazy if you think about it. Being able to use cards from your deck as fusion materials as many times per turn as you want just seems so ripe for abuse. Currently, the Chain Material Fusion Gate combo isn't really a meta thing because it's so easy to stop. You have to both set up a Chain Material and Fusion Gate without either of them getting destroyed, but with cards like Trap Trick, a trap card that came out very recently, which allows you to basically search out any normal trap card and activate it that turn. And this has made the Chain Material combo more consistent. And this is kind of one of the things where we're just like one support card away from Chain Material being completely broken, and it's already capable of performing OTKs, and in some niche cases, very inconsistent ones I might also stress, it can be used in FTKs. Number 8, Sky Striker Ace Kagari. This card has the effect to add a Sky Striker spell card from your graveyard to your hand when it's special summoned. And this card is very easy to special summon, as all it requires is one non-fired type Sky Striker ace monster. So with a card like Striker Mech, Hornet Drones, and Kagari, you can get an instant Link 2 monster without using your normal summon. All you have to do is use Hornet Drones to bring out a token, use the token to bring out Kagari, use Kagari to add Hornet Drones back to your hand from the graveyard, then use Hornet Drones again to create another token, and then use the token in Kagari to go into a Link 2 monster. But Kagari is a hard once per turn, so you can't abuse its +1 effect. Now, what makes this card so good that it'll probably be banned or limited in some way in the future is that it works with just about any deck, and can recycle more than just Hornet Drones. Really though, Hornet Drones is more the problem in this scenario, and that's why Hornet Drones is currently limited in the TCG already, but Kagari is just as important in that one card Link 2 combo, and that's why this card is already limited in the OCG. Now, I know Kagari's effect is a lot more simple than Chain Material or Independent Nightingale, but sometimes it's these simple like effects that are very splashable in just about any deck that just see more play. And that's why it's on a higher spot on this list than the other two. Number 7, Topologic Gumblar Dragon. This is a Link 4 monster with 2 effects. Its first effect is, if a monster is special summoned to a zone a Link monster points to, while this card is on the field, you can discard 1 to 2 random cards from your hand to make your opponent discard the same amount. Its second effect is that if this card is extra linked, you can make your opponent discard 1 or 2 cards, and if they have no more cards in their hand due to this effect, you can inflict 3,000 points of damage to them. And you can only use one of its effects per turn, so you can't use both of them on the same turn to make your opponent discard 4 cards. But there are ways to use its first effect to make your opponent discard 4 cards before they enter their first main phase. Now, both of its effects are basically like Delinquent Duo, only the drawbacks to them kind of even it out. Delinquent Duo was banned for being way too powerful for what it does. Pay 1,000 life points to discard 2 cards in your opponent's hand. If used during your first turn, your opponent will start off with a 4-card hand, giving them much less options to deal with whatever board you have out. But Gumblar Dragon is a Link 4 monster that also requires you to discard the same amount of cards you're forcing your opponent to discard. So it's a lot harder to bring out and use than Delinquent Duo, and has a negative effect that's actually negative, unlike just paying 1,000 life points with Delinquent Duo, as discarding random cards is the worst way you want to discard cards from your hand to activate an effect. That all being said, there are decks that can bring out Gumblar Dragon, use its first effect to discard 2 cards from your opponent's starting hand, and then add 2 more cards back to their hand, end their turn, and then during your opponent's draw phase, use cards like Link Karibo to special summon it to a zone a Link monster points to, in order to activate its first effect again, to basically make your opponent start with 4 less cards in their opening hand, which is just a crazy good combo that can basically win you the game before your opponent gets a chance to play at all. And this is one of those cards in this list that's already broken on its own, and will probably be on the ban list in the future for people abusing its effects in the way I just described. And at number 6, we have another card with a very devilishly simple effect that is just very strong, and that's Trickstar Reincarnation. This card has the effect to just banish your opponent's entire hand, and then your opponent gets to draw cards equal to the amount that they banished. Also, you can banish this card from your graveyard to special summon a Trickstar monster from the graveyard. Both of these effects are good, and this card is easily searched out in Trickstar decks. Now, what makes this card broken is that its first effect can be comboed with Droll and Lockbird. If your opponent uses the card to search something out, like reinforcements of the army, you can chain Trickstar Reincarnation to that search, and then activate Droll and Lockbird. Since Droll and Lockbird doesn't need to be activated immediately in response to a search, it can be chained after Reincarnation, and then the chain will resolve backwards. Droll and Lockbird's effect will go off, Reincarnation will go off, banishing your opponent's entire hand, and then, since Droll and Lockbird's effect prevents your opponent from adding cards to their hand for the rest of the turn, they just won't draw any cards to replace that hand, leaving them with 0 cards in their hand after this combo. Forget Gumblar Dragon using a complicated chain to get 4 cards out of your opponent's hand. Reincarnation and Lockbird can get rid of the entire thing with much less effort. And did I mention Droll and Lockbird is played in pretty much every meta deck, because it's also just a really good card outside of this combo? Trickstar Reincarnation has a graveyard effect that's also really good. It's basically a spell speed 2 monster reborn of any Trickstar monster in your graveyard. Honestly, many people wondered why this card hasn't been banned already, and this card is currently limited over in the OCG. Number 5, Windup Hunter. This card has the effect to tribute 1 face-up Windup monster, except Windup Hunter, to discard 1 random card from your opponent's hand, and the effect can only be used 1 time as long as this card is face-up on the field, which means it's not a hard once per turn. And because of this, back in the early days of Exceeds monsters, there was a combo with Windup Hunter and Windup Carrier to make your opponent lose their entire hand during your first turn. You'll notice a lot of these broken cards have effects which discard cards from your opponent's hand before they have a chance to play the game. But with Windup Carrier getting banned and Windup Magician, another key card in the combo, getting limited, the Windup Hunter loops basically stopped. But they never hit Windup Hunter, even though he was the one discarding cards from your opponent's hand. Instead, they got rid of Carrier, because honestly, Carrier was pretty powerful and was ripe for abuse in other ways anyway. And so was Windup Magician. So with these 2 cards hit, they didn't really need to hit Hunter. Then, in the Link era, people found ways to use Windup Hunter's loop again, and this kind of begs the question. Cards in the future will be released, and will sometimes allow Windup Hunter to reuse its effect enough times to get rid of your opponent's starting hand. And trying to prevent it by hitting all of the cards that cause it seems counterintuitive when you can just ban the card itself. And that's why this card is banned, in the OCG anyway. Currently no one is using Windup Hunter in top meta decks to get rid of your opponent's entire starting hand in the TCG, so it's probably safe, but it is technically possible to do it, and it really shouldn't be. Number 4, Glowup Bulb. This card, funny enough, was banned for a long time. Currently, the card is unlimited though. This card has the effect where, while it's in the graveyard, you can send the top card of your deck to the graveyard to special summon this card, and you can only use this effect once per duel. It's also a level 1 tuner, which makes this a great effect. And this is one of those cards that'll probably be banned if a card in the OCG ever finally makes its way to the TCG. With Needle Fiber, Glowup Bulb becomes a 1-card Link 4 monster. All you need to do is normal summon Glowup Bulb, link it away with Link Karibo, use its effect from the graveyard to bring it back, use both to go into a Needle Fiber, use the Needle Fiber and the tuner monster brought out to go into Summon Sorceress, use Summon Sorceress to special summon a card from the deck, and then you use Summon Sorceress and the card it brought out to go into the Link 4. Currently though, this combo is impossible in the TCG because we don't have Needle Fiber yet, so this is one of those cards that'll probably be banned in the future if we ever get Needle Fiber, as 1-card Link 4 plays are generally pretty powerful. Also in the OCG, where they do have Needle Fiber, Glowup Bulb is already banned. Number 3, Summon Sorceress. You'll notice in the previous example, I used Summon Sorceress as part of the Link 4 play for Glowup Bulb, and that's because Summon Sorceress has an incredibly powerful effect. This card has the effect where, when it's Link summoned, you can special summon 1 card from your hand to an opponent's zone this card points to. Its second effect is you can target 1 card this card points to, and special summon 1 monster from your deck that has the same type as that monster, but that monster has to go to another one of the zones this card points to, and in defense position, and its effects are negated. Now, let me tell you a little something about the basics of Yu-Gi-Oh! Effects. Cards that can special summon monsters from the deck are very rare. Cards that can special summon basically any monster from the deck are almost non-existent. Summon Sorceress is a monster that can summon basically any monster from the deck. Its special summon from the deck doesn't have a restriction other than it needing to be the same type of monster as one it points to. So you can special summon a level 5 or higher monster as long as you have a same type in one of the other zones. That can be a token or a level 1 monster, for example. It can be anything, so basically it allows you to search out anything. The fact that it's in defense position and its effects are negated doesn't really matter. It just stops it from being absurdly broken. And instead, it's just normal broken. That kind of consistency is good in just about any deck, and its first effect even allows you to set up its second effect's combo. And it's easy to bring out. You just need 2+ monsters of the same type except tokens. Summon Sorceress is currently banned in the OCG, and I wouldn't be surprised if it was banned in the TCG sometime in the future as well. Number 2, Divine Sword Phoenix Blade. Now, this is a card I never really thought I would talk about in a list like this. This is one of those niche cards that's been in the game since like nearly the early days of Yu-Gi-Oh! That no one ever really used until new support came along that all of a sudden made it amazing, on a nearly broken level. Kind of like how no one used Super Rejuvenation until Dragon Rulers came out. Phoenix Blade has the effect to equip to a warrior monster and give it 300 attack. No one uses it for this effect. Its second effect is, during your main phase, you can banish 2 warrior monsters from your graveyard to add this card to your hand from your graveyard. Remember how earlier on in this list I talked about Gumblar Dragon being able to discard cards to get rid of 4 cards from your opponent's hand? Phoenix Blade is a big reason Gumblar Dragon is able to do that. Lots of the good Link monsters require discard costs, and Phoenix Blade in a warrior spam heavy deck becomes instant card advantage to be used for those discards. It's not once per turn, and it's easily put into the graveyard with Isolde. It's already included in a lot of warrior heavy decks, and kind of makes a lot of them more viable. And that's why it's already banned in the OCG. And now, number 1, Toon Cannon Soldier. Number 1 isn't just Toon Cannon Soldier though. I'd also put Cannon Soldier MK2, Amazoness Archer, and Shadow Priestess of Ohm. These are the 5 monster cards which contribute monsters to inflict burn damage to your opponent without a once per turn clause. And because these cards exist, if a strategy exists in the future which allows you to somehow recycle cards infinitely, these cards allow those strategies to win on your first turn. There's already a spell card on the ban list called Mass Driver, which does the same thing, except with Mass Driver you didn't have to find a way to get a monster on the field. At least with these tribute monsters, strategies which infinitely recycle cards have to also find a way to normal or special summon these cards within those strategies, which actually dampers them a little bit. And that's why they've all been live for as long as they had, whereas Mass Driver has been banned for years. Because those cards on their own aren't broken or even good. It's the fact that they allow potential FTK combos to exist is the problem. And the reason I choose Toon Cannon Soldier over the other 4 cards is because Toon Cannon Soldier is the card with the best search option. Toon Cannon Soldier can be sought out with Toon Table of Contents, a search card that can search other copies of itself from the deck. So it makes grabbing out Toon Cannon Soldier a lot easier and also allows you to thin your deck more by searching out the other Toon Table of Contents before you search out the Cannon Soldier. But in a lot of FTK decks they don't really bother running Toon Cannon Soldier, so it doesn't really matter which of the 2 I put at number 1, but Toon Cannon Soldier and regular Cannon Soldier are definitely the best of the bunch. Amazoness Archer would probably be the 3rd best, since it requires 2 tributes for its burn damage, but is at least a level 4 warrior type monster, so it has search options as well, and is part of an archetype. And then Cannon Soldier MK2, which is like Amazoness Archer, only requires a tribute summon itself. And then there's Shadow Priestess of Ohm, who can only tribute dark type monsters, so it's much more restrictive and the least likely of the bunch to be banned. Even though there was recently an FTK combo that revolved around tributing dark type monsters continuously. Of these 5 cards, 4 of them are already banned in the OCG, and the reason I put them above all the others is because these cards have been used in FTK combos for basically the entire history of Yu-Gi-Oh! And it's kind of a wonder why they've been left alone as long as they have in the first place. Alright, and that's it for the video. Any other really problematic cards that I may have missed? There were a lot of cards that I wanted to include on this list, but I left them out in order to choose these top 10. If you have ideas for videos similar to this one, I'd love to hear about them as well down in the comments.